And greetings. Happy Friday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show here live and on demand on Blaze TV, radio, and podcast. My name is Steve Deace. His name is Todd Erzin. His name is Erin McIntyre. Her name is Blaze TV contributor. No, that's not her name. That's her title. Her name is Jill Savage. Title, Blaze TV contributor. Of course, we have assembled for the Deace Group. We'll get to that here in mere moments. Next hour, we will get to Feedback Friday here on the show when we will respond to the responses that you have compiled for us. I am slowly but surely getting a hold and control of my inbox after the 71,000 emails I had 72 hours ago. Almost all of them are now gone. We're getting there. So I'm slowly but surely beginning to respond to you all again. Before we get into today's show, though, something I want to mention that is coming up that I think is very important. Our colleague, Jason Whitlock, has an event coming up in the Nashville area. That is, I think, when you look at where our country is right now on a moral and spiritual level, we are in a very, very dangerous place. And as I've been telling people when I've been doing interviews for Nefarious over the last few weeks, and why my company risked millions of dollars to make this movie, and I've pointed out, hey, we're at the lip here of the mouth of madness, and we're staring into the abyss, and we're more than testing the waters. We're about to belly flop as a culture into this thing, and you don't come back from it. And so my man Jason Whitlock is trying to do his part. He has organized an event April 15th in Nashville. It is the Fearless Army Get-Together, and it's called the Roll Call. It's an all-day event in Nashville that will encourage men to put on the full armor of God and take a stand against the evil that is threatening us. And you're going to hear speeches from Jason, several special guests as well. You can join hundreds of like-minded men in Nashville on April the 15th for this important conference, but tickets are selling out fast. So secure yours today by going to fearlessarmyrollcall.com. That's fearlessarmyrollcall.com. And with that, it is now time for the Deace Group. Your weekly look at the week that was begins, as it always does, with Issue 1, Bleep, Lord Nefarious Says.
We will not let fear win. A world without trans people has never existed. A world without drag has never existed, and it never will. Queer people have always been here amongst us. They are our coworkers, they are our brothers, our sisters, they are our mothers, our fathers, they are our families. Drag is art, drag is culture, drag is educational, drag is creative, drag is comedy, but drag is not a crime.
Well, it's cowardice from everybody all around.
You! People probably want to. How do you keep your composure?
You! What's
How do you keep your composure?
you?
You! You!
Nothing.
You! 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 Hey! Get your ass up there!
I just wanted to ask you, given comments by Keir Starmer in Britain, how does this government define a woman?
To be honest, Sean, that question's come slightly out of left field for me. Biology, sex, gender. People define themselves.
An adult baby is somebody who enjoys dressing up and acting like a baby, and it could be as young as, you want to be a 6-month-old, or you can go up to 2 or 3 years old. It's whatever that feels right for you. I associate most with being 2 years old because I think it's the best of both worlds. You're young enough to still be able to use a crib and a bottle and diapers and all that stuff, but you're also still old enough that you can get around on your own and talk and tell people what you want. Refreshing.
What's going on with this rain? This is not conducive for a pride party.
Bitch, we got up in the morning and it was just pouring.
You can't rain on our parade? I'm so glad we're not in drag and heels and wigs right now.
Can you imagine in like the weather being so bad and just makeup and hair? Oh, that would be, that stretch inside. But listen, people, we have a party to plan and we need to go get some decorations and we need to get this going.
LGBTQI+ kids are resilient. They are fierce. They fight back.
Elbert County deputies, discovered 19-year-old William Whitworth's manifesto with hit list and specific plans to print out guns to carry out those attacks. Court records reveal the 3 schools the student was targeting are Prairie Hills Elementary, Timberview Middle School, and Pine Creek High School.
Disciples always act on behalf of that which has truly discipled them. Let's get to it. Jill as both the guest and ladies first. First question. What the hell?
I don't want to go first this week, Steve. It's all so bad when you look at it. First, I want to address the adult man who identifies as a 2-year-old. I don't know what to think when our society is just going to say, yes, you who are able to function in a society and should be of working age and out there producing for our society and making everything better for yourself, your family, those around you. Yet it's just cool to lay there in a crib and say, I identify as a 2-year-old because, you know, it's the best of all worlds. I get to have diapers, but still tell people what I want. My brain doesn't know how to process that, Steve. But then all of the rest of the trans madness, and we keep seeing it, right? Like the Dylan Mulvaney thing for Nike, where he's out there pushing sports bras and leggings for Nikes when he doesn't have any use for a sports bra. Kelsey Ballerini was highlighted there for the drag performance for the CMT Awards. But when you look at it, it's no wonder that we get to the end with the potential shooter in Colorado with the manifesto, who is not only, we already know the manifesto that this trans shooter put out, but we don't know the one from the Nashville shooter. They won't release that one. The Communist Manifesto was also found in the Colorado shooter's possessions. We know that there were empty alcohol bottles. There was molding food. We know all of this stuff already for the Colorado potential shooter, but they won't tell us anything that has been found inside the home, any details around the Nashville shooter. It feels more like they're going to do the Nashville shooter the way of the Vegas shooter. We're not going to know much about it. They're just going to try and memory hole that one. It must have been so bad that they don't think that we can know the truth. But the trans madness is still the absolute worst of the week.
Before we move on, that prompted something that I wanted to say, Jill, so thank you for going there. If you are planning on attending a Good Friday and or Easter service this weekend, in light of recent events, I don't think that you have to be a tinfoil hat wearer to consider that this might be the timing of which a target-rich environment. You should be talking to your church leadership and clergy about what security precautions they already have in place and typically do. If you don't already know, you should ask. And if you're a CCL, you should absolutely be taking full advantage of that. Those are not things many of us, unless you were black in the Jim Crow South going to Easter services, those aren't conversations we have typically had elsewhere or in other periods of time in American history. But I think they're conversations we need to be having right now. So I had it on my mind to say this on the show today. It had slipped my mind until what Jill had to say there. So I wanted to make sure I said it out loud for the, I don't know how many hundreds of thousands that are listening or watching right now, that you absolutely check with your church and make sure that they have security. Todd, your thoughts?
Well, I am thrilled that the Tennessee legislature is exercising their blessings of liberty and kicking out the insurrection clowns. Your words, your rules, not mine. And sending them packing. But as we've talked about, politics is downstream from culture. I still, the rest of you, culturally, Nashville, you need to take out your trash. Kelsey Ballerini should never work in that town again. She's the one that recently Matt Walsh talked about because she's recently divorced because it, quote, lost the sparkle. So it's no coincidence that now she's just mere days after children in that town get massacred by that tribe, the trans tribe, that now she's supporting them because she has to make the world flat for her mistakes. Instead of humbling herself before God, she has to make the world flat, and all of you must suffer. She should never work in that town again. Those two, it would be of far greater consequence to make sure that that happens. And it's not an either or, but then just throwing out those two legislators. I'm glad it happened. But take your entire state back. All of it. This is the sorting. Sheeps and goats. And we have no time for this. Kelsey, if Kelsey Ballerini will only grow more popular, and hey, I think the betting money is in that direction, that's a problem. And how red of a state are you really if you aren't going to take out your trash?
Aaron?
I go to the man-child. I watched that video of the adult man who believes or identifies with a 2-year-old. And I watched that, and I think a lot of people who are on the side of live and let live, don't get me involved with the trans stuff, to the golf clappers, yay, that's beautiful, but I really know deep down inside it's a rejection of reality. Most people watching that, if they're being honest, sadly, probably come to the conclusion, this dude, for whatever reason, and I don't know his backstory, but this dude, for whatever reason, has some real trauma or abuse in his background, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And that's sad. And he's living out this fantasy as a way to cope or deal with that. That's tragic. His mental illness that he's playing out in live acting is no different. You heard the New Zealand Prime Minister say it. People identify how they want. So why can't you identify? If you can identify as a woman, by what standard would you say you can't identify as a 2-year-old? Or a 200-year-old, or what have you? There's literally no ground. Why is this just reserved for one type of mental illness? And we all know the answer. We all know the answer to that. It's what Riley Gaines is learning, or learned last night, and she already knew. Being assaulted by a mob, let's be frank, would have murdered her, ripped her limb from limb, if not for security. But yes, Karine Jean-Pierre, trans kids are resilient, and they fight back. Goes back to what you just opened this segment with, Steve. The true disciples act out on their beliefs. They have a metric crap ton of true disciples, true believers on the other side, and we are seeing them now nearly daily act out on their delusions.
That brings me to Dylan Mulvaney for just a moment, and why he is suddenly omnipresent, and these companies are lining up to genuflect and recognize him. It's because this is how a religion operates. I mean, today is Good Friday. It's one of the holiest days on the calendar if you're a Christian. I'll talk more about what it means later in the show. But you should recognize, even though it is a bitter fruit, even though it is a sour fruit, even though it is a poison fruit, you should recognize the fruit of what is happening here. This is religion. The spirit of the age religion actually respects its ecclesiastical authority. Adherents to the spirit of the age religion recognize that Dylan Mulvaney has been given an anointing. He is a prophet / priest / apostle. And now the other adherents are lining up to recognize that anointing. That's why he is suddenly everywhere. He's been called. He is answering that call. Those who have been similarly called are amplifying the call. That's what's happening. Now, I know this may, we live in an era where a lot of people who claim to be Christians don't even know what the Great Commission is. So this may seem odd to you, weird to you. But it is a counterfeit version of how we're to behave. We just don't feel called to literally just about anything, except comfort and Netflix and everyday life and making as much money as we can. And then we just kind of fit church and fit Jesus in where it goes. You're watching real commitment. This is actually what our side used to have. When 100 pilgrims, including women and children, get on a boat and risk life and limb to come over the English Channel and don't even dock until near winter. Half of them die the first year. And when they finally find safe port, they put out a document that said they did this for the kingdom of Christ. Now that's commitment. That's how this thing used to roll out here in this thing called Western civilization. Used to roll like that. It doesn't do it anymore, so we don't recognize it. And we've abrogated that ground, and all the commitment is now on the other side. These corporations are not selling out. You are playing by a paradigm that is dead. If you're saying that, you're just like the Republicans who want to be held accountable to some constitutional standard that is irrelevant while the other side just has shredded it and doesn't want to recognize what time it is. They're not selling out. This isn't patronizing. It's not even, this is beyond even what we see every June with the pander. This is nomine patre. That's what this is. And all who gazed upon the beast marveled at the beast and wondered who is like the beast and who would wage war with it. This is conditioning, programming for how something like Revelation 13 could actually be fulfilled in a modern world. You're watching it. This is not pandering. I know that we have secularized ourselves on the right. I get that. The enemy hasn't bothered secularizing themselves at all. They've got some old-time religion, like real old-time, like Genesis 3, ye be like God, old kind of stuff. That's what they're rolling right here. And you're watching ritual and liturgy just take place out in the open. This is like having an ash on your forehead. This is like wearing a WWJD bracelet. A purity ring. That's what this is. Except they mean it. Ask Riley Gaines. They absolutely mean it. And they will go to the nth degree to show you. You will be made to care. It isn't pandering. It's genuflection. That's why they're risking stock prices, share prices, quarterly reports, profit margins. And we keep waiting for the natural laws of economics, the shareholders to finally rebel and say, what is this? We're only here to make money. No, we're only here to make money. They're not. We are. They're not. And unless that changes, I promise you this. In this landmass, they will win. And we will assume our position. The next ankle-grabbing would-be empire on the ash heap of history, finding its page in the history books as the world just moves on. Exit question. On a scale of 1 to 10, with one being the likelihood the Biden White House won't be promoting minor attracted persons at some point. I mean, when you have the White House spokeswoman say this week that children can consent to getting these meatball surgeries, well, then we're 10 minutes away from children can just consent to anything then, right?
Yeah.
That's where we are. That's where this is going next. So 1 is the odds. 1, that's it. That the Biden White House won't be promoting minor attracted persons at some point here in the next 10 minutes, 6 months at the most. And 10 being how likely it is that Lindsey Graham is a man-attracted person. Rank this week's level of total depravity. Jill?
10.
Todd?
Well, Biden already has a history of showering with his daughter, so 10.
Well, there's that. Aaron?
I'm at a 10.
Issue 2, indicted.
Donald Trump showed up in a Manhattan courtroom on Tuesday and was formally arraigned after his indictment stemming from supposed crimes surrounding his alleged hush money payments to porn star Stormy Daniels ahead of the 2016 election. Trump is accused of the exact same felony 34 separate times, with each count having the date changed. That felony is falsifying business records with the intent to cover up another crime, though it's never stated what that other crime is. After being arraigned on Tuesday, Trump addressed a crowd of supporters back in Florida at Mar-a-Lago.
And I never thought anything like this could happen in America. Never thought it could happen. The only crime that I have committed is to fearlessly defend our nation from those who seek to destroy it.
All right, let's get to our first question here. True or false? And Jill, I'll begin with you, since the three of us have kind of discussed this point already earlier this week. So let's get a fresh perspective. True or false? What is happening in Manhattan is not a legal proceeding, but a political one.
I would say absolutely true. When you look at it from the DA's perspective, we see all over the country that the Soros DAs are downplaying every charge, except for this one. They are ratcheting it up to a new level. Where is Lee Zeldin's attacker? He was freed the day that he was charged. But with Trump, because they need to make a show of it, Trump is also going in on it too, though. He's using this for fundraising. This indictment for him. He could have stayed down there in Florida and said, "No, I'm not going to go. Come get me." But he's not. He's playing into the cameras. Everybody knew every moment that he was going to get on the plane, when he was going to get off the plane. It has been a made-for-TV moment. And I was down there in Dallas for your movie premiere, and over in the Blaze workspace, and everybody was standing up and watching it. And it almost felt like the O.J. Simpson car chase at that moment, that the way that we were being made to consume this news. Oh, watch every single move that Trump is going to make. And when he's out there, when he's giving those speeches from Mar-a-Lago, it's not so much about the DA, the New York hearing. It sounds more like a campaign speech. So when you look at it from the DA's perspective, what's an Alvin Bragg? Who's an Alvin Bragg? Well, everybody knows now Trump is also using it to his benefit. So is this legal? No, because it has no legal precedent. Anybody that you talk to, anything that you read about this, they say this is blown out of proportion. This is absolutely political. They want to hurt him, and they want to make it so that he cannot run again, or if he is, that he is so wounded that people won't look at him the same way. Are they going to go out and get any extra voters? No, the Trump loyalists are still going to be behind him 100%. So this is just the red meat for everybody else that isn't part of that MAGA group.
Okay, so then Aaron, if it is a political proceeding, as I am suggesting and Jill affirms, then evidence doesn't matter. Motions don't matter. None of it matters. The fix is already in. He's already convicted. I mean, it's the same jury pool that did the indictment. It's the same, 12% of Manhattanites are voted for Trump, 12. From that pool of people is who gave us these indictments of 34 felonies. And it's from that pool of people that will give us a conviction. You want to bypass a jury, go right to the judge. The judge is a Soros donor or a Biden donor. I'm sorry. So this is how he builds his resume to get a federal appointment someday. I mean, the fix is in here. And this is supposedly the one that is the thinnest gruel of all the cases that they are lining up. So the conviction's just a matter of time then. Is that true or false?
Yep, it's true. And the answer to your first question is It's whatever they want it to be at any given time. Eventually, somebody with the power to do so is going to have to tell whatever other blue state or federal government, stick it where the sun don't shine.
Exactly. Yep.
What was the conversation? I've done this twice, so you can flog me after the show. I think I've done this twice this week. Whatever happens in the overtime stays in the overtime. No sympathy for women who are willing to go out and fight a full grown-ass man in MMA. No sympathy. You signed on to do that. You consented to it. At some point, we're going to have to do the same thing with these types of people. Yesterday, 6-3 conservative majority on our United States Supreme Court. Right? It's a 6-3 majority, right?
Allegedly.
Yesterday, the Supreme Court said, ain't got no time to, actually deliberate regarding the West Virginia law banning dudes from competing on women's sports teams. Alito and Thomas were the only people who dissented from the Supreme Court saying, whatever, can't be bothered with that. So now West Virginia is just going to, I assume the position. At some point, I have no sympathy for anybody. Yeah, are they victims? Yes. But if you have the means and ability to tell the federal government, or in this case, some borough of New York City, take a flying leap, but you just play along with the game, no sympathy for you. No sympathy. At some point, you have to take the matters into your own hands, because we are not devolving into a banana republic. We are now officially one. We are now officially a banana republic. And for the limited outposts that want to live within the rule of law, stop playing by their rule of law. For the people, the dumbasses who went and protested in New York City on behalf of a dude who can't even give two wits about the people in the D.C. gulag, they might say, it's America. I can go out in the streets and protest.
It's not New York.
It's not America. New York City is not America, guys. Yeah. It's not America. It's a different country. You may be in a red state that may not be what America once was, but it's certainly not that. So I have no sympathy. No sympathy whatsoever. Is Trump victimized here? Yes. Is he playing along with it? Is he continuing to dig that hole deeper? Absolutely, yes, he is.
I mean, he's selling T-shirts to get ready to convict him of 34 felonies. So.
Yeah, he had a governor who was willing and able to protect him, and he did diddly squat. So no sympathy.
Todd, you get 1 minute.
It's neither. It's nefarious. It is the book. It's showing you that we don't want to stop ourselves. We can't. There's no math that can be shown. There's no logic that can be shown. Again, Tennessee, right? They are complaining. This is an unprecedented attack against the opposition party. At the same time, Donald Trump, the opposition party, is. Come on. Yeah. This is nefarious. I'm not going to call it political. It's like Dennis Miller used to say, I'd call him a scumbag, but that would give a bad name to bags of scum. This is preposterous. This isn't politics. This is nefarious. This is the end of civilization.
It's just demonic, bro, in other words.
Yeah.
All is gaslighting. Gaslighting is all. It's a truthless moment in time in our history right now, and that's why we're devolving. There's no anchor. There's no plumb line at all. Let's get to the exit question. If today, April 7th, 2023, if today you had to make a call on the odds that Donald Trump will take the oath of office in January of 2025 as the next president of the United States, and you did so using a number one song from the 1980s, which of these 1980s number one songs would it be? A, Against All Odds. B, I Can't Go For That. C, Sweet Dreams Are Made of This. D, That's Just the Way It Is. Aaron.
Just listened to this morning. B.
I Can't Go For That. Little Hall & Oates. Todd.
Same.
Jill.
Against All Odds. A.
That could go either way, though. You could say, yes, he'll do it against all odds, or not against these odds. No.
No, not against these odds.
Okay. I just think, I'm going to do an interview tomorrow, wants to talk about the Trump-DeSantis thing, and I'm just saying right now that's kind of irrelevant. We can't even sit here today and know that Donald Trump will qualify for a ballot. Do you know that?
No.
I don't. They got 3 or 4 more of these lined up, right? We don't even know. We don't have a clue. All right, we'll come back. More of the Deace Group here in a moment. Remember the last couple of years when they wouldn't let you have medications that had been FDA cleared for 60 plus years, that tens of millions had been given, that had just won a Nobel Prize in 2015, that have been given to millions of people around the globe, and they suddenly not only wouldn't let you have them, they said they weren't safe. The actual manufacturer of ivermectin, Merck, who accepted the Nobel Prize for manufacturing it, tried to tell you during the pandemic that it wasn't a safe drug to take. I mean, you can't trust anything. The great prophet Flavor Flav had it right. Can't trust it. All right, so you never know. The next time you might need a venerable medication, they might tell you, nah, we actually kind of need you to die instead because we've got this technology we've been working on that doesn't actually work. And when it doesn't work, it's poisoning you. But if there are things on the market that do work, we can't bring this $1 trillion initiative to bear. And so, yeah, you're chattel. Don't let that happen to you. Get the Jace case right now from our friends over at Jace Medical. Jase, Jase for Jace Medical. 5 venerable antibiotics, including the hard to find these days, amoxicillin, doxycycline, and others. JaceMedical.com. Doctor created, doctor recommended. Use the code DACE at checkout for a discount on your order. Code DACE for the discount at checkout when you go to JaceMedical.com. Let's bring back in Blaze TV contributor Jill Savage as we march on with your weekly look at the week that was. Let's get to issue 3. Is 2024 already lost?
On Tuesday night, conservatives lost a key election in the state of Wisconsin on that state's Supreme Court as liberal Milwaukee County Judge Janet Protasiewicz shellacked her conservative opponent Daniel Kelly 55-44. Kelly had some harsh words regarding the race during his concession speech.
I wish that in a circumstance like this, I would be able to concede to a worthy opponent. But I do not have a worthy opponent to which I can concede. This was the most deeply deceitful, dishonorable, despicable campaign I have ever seen run for the courts. It was truly beneath contempt.
Protasiewicz heavily outspent Kelly, and her election opens up a huge door on a bevy of issues, 2 of which could heavily influence Wisconsin's status as a battleground state in 2024: voter ID and mail-in voting.
So here's the thing. I want to clear something up right now. Okay. This idea that he didn't win, that Daniel Kelly didn't win because he didn't run closely aligned to Trump. I want to clear this up right now. In 2020, Daniel Kelly did run with Trump's endorsement and lost by 11 points. All right. Now this race, he lost by 13 points. So, 12 and a half. So if you want to say it was a dumb move to not get Trump's endorsement for the Wisconsin State Supreme Court because you lost worse than you lost the last time, you can make that claim. I mean, clearly Trump's endorsement was a 1.5 difference. All right, he lost by 12.5. The other night, he lost by 11 in 2020. So if you want to make that case, fine. But there, in no way, shape, or form did Daniel Kelly lose because he didn't run closely aligned enough with Trump. That's just not reality. It's just not. I mean, he tried that in 2020, and he lost by double digits in that respects as well. There are people now making the case, guys, this is just a Roe v. Wade vote. Roe v. Wade wasn't overturned in 2020 when Daniel lost by 11 points in the Supreme Court election of Wisconsin. Okay? So I guess the same thing. If you want to say, all right, Roe v. Wade brought on another 1.5 of people that to vote against this guy, these are largely the same results with or without Trump as running as a MAGA judge, with or without the overturning of Roe v. Wade. The results really in the state of Wisconsin, not all that much different. So Todd, I want to start with you because this is your home state. All right. And if you do the Electoral College math, it is pretty close. I mean, if you are considering that in heavily suburban states like Nevada and Arizona that used to lean red pre-Trump, and we've lost them because he's weak in the suburbs, then the states in the Midwest where we did gain ground in the Trump years, well, at least in 2020, Michigan, Wisconsin, those would be some form, depending on if he's going to be the nominee again or not, it would be some form of a must win in 2024. Have the odds that any Republican could win Wisconsin in 2024 been greatly diminished by the results of this race, as many of our peers are reporting and writing and columnizing this week?
Well, I cautioned a couple of days ago when we talked about this that as it applies to one race, we often get way too geeky about that off-year election and try to project. I also said that regarding Wisconsin, remember its history. Scott Walker was saved from recall. Tommy Thompson was there. He was like our he was Wisconsin's Terry Branstad before I became an Iowan. But listen, this is to its west, Minnesota, Wisconsin, go across the lake, Michigan, Pennsylvania. This is outside Wisconsin. There's something in the water in those places. I'm mentioning places that used to be purple, and now I don't think we can rely on a single one of those states. So it might be over. I mean, I saw a guy report that there was wide open bribery for votes. If you vote, you'll get gift cards or things like that. I did not have a chance to. It was not an unreputable source, but I didn't have a chance to follow up on that. But again, remember, there's a guy we just discussed, I think, at the beginning of this week that might go to prison for 10 years for a meme. See, this is whatever they say we're guilty of, they're doing.
Always.
I didn't follow up, but do we have any doubts that people were just flat out in the open being bribed to vote and you'll get gift cards and things like that? They did it with vaccines and your health. I mean, this is what we're up against.
There's been the walking around money, quote unquote, phenomenon in black neighborhoods that have gone on. That's gone on longer than anybody that's currently on this panel has been alive. That's not a new phenomenon.
Yeah. So I bring this up, and I'm glad you brought up. Is abortion on the table on some level? Of course, but I think you were very right to point out the difference between pre and post ruling and where this guy's it was basically a wash. So I think it's more than that. I think it's right now the Midwest has lost its mind.
I shouldn't say this because I have a movie coming out next week that's getting a ton of positive and unified buzz across the conservative blogosphere right now, which it has earned, and I'm very appreciative for. No, when you all see the movie next week, you'll see none of this is just idle flattery. Carrie Solomon and Chuck Conselman did a hell of a job making this movie, okay? But I didn't get to the place where I get the chances to do things like make movies because I put off telling people what I really think to when it's more conveniently simple and easy to do so. So I'm not going to do that. So let me tell you what's really happening here. Let me rephrase that. I'm not God. I don't know what's really happening here. Here's what I think is really happening here. What's really happening here is that the Republican Party is trapped in an mRNA injection. Whatever short boost it gets minimally by repeatedly taking these shots, it ends up diminishing your immune system over time, makes you more susceptible to long-term side effects, and yet you keep taking the shot, though, because you're concerned that I might lose right now. I might get sick right now. I might get COVID right now. And so I'll just keep taking it over and over again. And you're caught in a feedback loop here. All right. And you're like a heroin addict, except this substance is legal and you're subsidizing it. And that's frankly what Trump represents politically. I have to save America right now. They hate Donald Trump. He's willing to just challenge him on some level. But here's the problem. By making him your champion, they have you cornered. Now, I don't know. I don't know that going to a younger, fresher face like Ron DeSantis can get outside of this Kobayashi Maru scenario. I don't know the answer to that. I don't. I just know that this scenario is highly unlikely to work, and here's why. Because on one hand, they are better organized than you are. They are more committed than you are. They are better funded than you are. I mean, right now, a lot of you think the guy that's done every policy you've ever wanted a governor to do is the rhino because he's raising money. I mean, that's not how this works, not how any of this works, okay? So they've got you completely outpositioned. Trump has completely mobilized their base at a level we've never seen before, anything like this. And they're lit. They're at max lit in total. They don't come down. There's no come down period, right? I mean, they're literally the entire Democratic Party right now is basically Cialis incarnate. They're just ready to roll, man. They're on it, ready to go. Constantly. On the other hand, they have created a narrative by which a not insignificant percentage of voters will never vote for Trump, no matter what he does to reinvent himself. No matter how bad things, with 50, 75% inflation, I don't care. Won't matter. Won't make a difference to them. They keep proving it to us since 2016. They keep proving it to us in every election cycle over and over and over again. I don't know how many more times do we have to get our heads caved in before we get this message? And then they have a precedent, since nobody got punished for it. They now have a precedent in place that they can just steal an election from you to get the last few points they would need should the environment turn against them somewhat. That's it. I don't know the way out of that. I don't know. I can't sit here and tell you on April 7th. I don't know what kind of an organization Ron DeSantis will build. I don't know in the end how he'll play and where. I mean, his favorables are very high right now, but he also hasn't had to wear on people over the course of 6, 8, 9 months of a campaign. He's a shiny object. That may change. I don't know the answers to any of those questions. I do know this path largely and almost he won one election by 78,000 total votes spread out over 4 states. Since then, they have their base max lit. They have solidified their ability to fortify the election. In most places, they have to win. It seems to me the only path you have out of this, because Ron DeSantis was great on voter fraud in Florida, but that's just Florida, okay? That doesn't Arizona, Georgia, all these other places. It seems to me like the only path you have out of this is can a fresh face win back some of the suburbanites that Trump has permanently lost? I'm asking, do you guys see another path out of this than that? I don't see another path out of this than that. I don't. But am I wrong about this?
So, Todd, you mentioned Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania, kind of the upper Midwest.
Mm-hmm.
There's something in the water. I agree. Something that those 4 states, especially Minnesota and Michigan uniquely, I don't know as much about Wisconsin, but I'm pretty sure about Pennsylvania. The Republican Party apparatus in those states, especially Minnesota and Michigan, suck. And all 4 of those states have something in common. You have at least 1 or 2 large urban centers, but then a significant portion of rural voters as well in all 4 of those states. And I think something that just tactically, all 4 of those states, for the reasons probably that Steve is talking about here, tactically the Republican Party is split in all 4 of those states.
Mm-hmm.
So you're just stuck in on the brake pedal and the gas pedal at the same time. There's no unified, and usually when we talk about party unity, it's unify around the sucky candidate. But they are truly not at unity right now. And so there's no real overriding message, I don't think, from the Republican Party apparatus. There's just politicians doing things in each of those states.
And let me say this to close it out. I am never going to tell, if you really believe Donald Trump is the best candidate for the job, ignore all of my analysis and vote for him. I never in my career have I ever tried to tell someone to go against their conscience unless what they were suggesting was immoral. Have you ever heard me do it one time? And I hope I never will, all right? I'm just giving you an analysis of a situation given what's transpired now in 3 election cycles and now 4 with this Wisconsin State Supreme Court in a row. One of the rare bright spots you've had in these cycles is what Youngkin did in Virginia. What did he do? He kept Trump completely out, adopted a lot of his themes, but then then molded them into a traditional GOP campaign that brought those suburban voters back home. So you decide whether you think he is. It doesn't matter whether we think he can win or not. Cool. I voted for lots of people I knew going in weren't going to win because I thought it was the right thing to do. So I'm the last person to sit here and tell somebody not to do that. All right. You do that then. If that's what you are principally believe, God bless you. You'll get no argument and pushback out of me. Just understand going in. I wasn't deceiving myself either. I didn't think the dude from the Constitution Party was really going to win. Okay. So I'm not going to get myself all let down when it doesn't come through. Just know that going in. All right. Let's get to the exit question, and we'll skip right to the predictions because we went long there, and that's my fault. My bad. All right. Who do you think wins Wisconsin's electoral college votes in the 2024 election? You can choose a party or an individual. Jill, go ahead.
The Democrat candidate not named RFK Jr., whoever that will be.
Aaron?
D.
Yeah, Democrats.
Okay. Let's get to predictions. We'll skip the kicker question this week because I'm too long-winded. Aaron, your prediction, go.
In the next 12 months, Ron DeSantis will be forced or just do it on his own volition to defy a federal court or the Supreme Court, probably on the trans issue.
Man, I hope that happens.
Yep.
That's the most optimistic thing that's been said in this hour, frankly. Jill, go ahead.
I will say the GOP will continue to be pathetic, but that's not my prediction. My prediction is that Nefarious will have a very successful opening weekend. And congratulations, Steve, because you deserve it next weekend.
Thank you very much. That's very kind from your lips to the box office's ears. Thank you.
Jill stole mine, and I'm not going to change it. This needs to be said. I think this is going to be a top 10 movie of the year. It simply, and if it's not, it's because of nefarious forces that will nonetheless lead people to God, because it will just show all the more what time it is. This thing is a success right now, no matter what happens. But you build it, they will come. This is a Field of Dreams moment right now.
If that happens, I mean, you and I are doing shots of vinegar together here on this set.
Oh,
okay? In
mark
real
the
time.
tape.
All right.
Mark it.
In real time. That is going down. Okay. My prediction is C.J. Stroud's going to be the number 1 overall pick of the Carolina Panthers in the NFL draft in a couple of weeks.
That seems to be the growing consensus.
Yep. I think that's where this is heading. And I think if you're the Texans, man, you still end up with Bryce Young and you're going to play 8 or 9 games a year in a dome. You got to be very, very happy about how that worked itself out, too. All right. Good to see you, Jill. Appreciate you. We'll come back with Feedback Friday here next. Stay tuned. All right, back here, live and on demand. But really, not that much in demand, if we're really being honest. We just kind of hang out and then, just kind of see who kind of joins us. I mean, it's not really all that impressive. I mean, I'm sitting here in a Detroit Tigers hoodie, and Todd can't even bring himself to button his shirt up. And
because of this.
And is Aaron still sick?
No,
you sound better.
4 hours of daddy duty when I got home from work yesterday. Put him down, put Ben down. Took a very scalding hot bath, sweated profusely for about a half an hour, and then I slept for about 11 hours. So
nice.
And then I had a chiropractic appointment this morning before I came in. Feel like a new person.
There you go.
Is it against the dude code to talk about baths?
Yep. I did it anyway.
Okay, just making sure. Point of clarification.
Let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox. We'll find out what you think about what we think here in a matter of moments. Steve@stevedeace.com is the email address. You can like us on Facebook, MeWe, and Gab. Follow me at Steve Deace Show on Twitter, Getter, Instagram, and TikTok. That's DEACE. And then look for me over on Truth Social as well at Real Steve Deace. We're looking for you, if you are a podcast listener, to please leave us a 5-star review. And we want to thank each and every one of you who have done that for us already. And hit subscribe or follow as well, so we show up in your feed with a brand new episode each time we have one automatically. Thank you again to each of you that have done that for us too. This part of the show, Feedback Friday, brought to you by our friends over at Relief Factor. If you don't want to do this anymore, you're tired of going about your daily life living with pain, whether it's just even working out, walking uphill can feel like you're carrying a backpack full of rocks, whichever it is. All right. check out our friends at Relief Factor and see what it can do for you. It's not a drug, but it was developed by doctors to fight inflammation. You can try it today. Their 3-week quick start is just $19.95 to get you started. See if you don't see a difference with your chronic pain in 3 weeks or less, and find out, more than likely, you're going to discover why 70% of people who try the quick start end up joining the program and making the product a part of their full-time lifestyle. ReliefFactor.com is where you want to go. ReliefFactor.com, or call them at 800-4, the number 4, 800-4-RELIEF, 800-4-RELIEF, or again, that's ReliefFactor.com. All right, guys, ready for some Feedback Friday?
Yes.
All right, let's get to it. Let's start with Craig, who says, I have a question about a statement you guys made yesterday regarding RFK Jr. You said the tranny stuff is a no-go. I agree. Why is abortion not the same, just as demonic? Please help me understand, because I may have missed or misinterpreted something. Well, let me say first and foremost, I don't know anybody, except for somebody like Lila Rose, if you're in that group, who has written more, done more speeches, organized politically more, that has a full-time show on the right, on the life issue, than I have, or the abortion issue. If we're gonna take the life issue and distill it down into one segment of it, okay, then I have on this over the long course of my career. Okay, so I mean, obviously, it is a prime directive of me, but. What's the moral calculus? And I might be wrong. I mean, we just kind of were riffing on this yesterday. It's not like we sit down among the three of us and like wrote a treatise or a dissertation. All right, but is the hundreds of thousands of people that were killed by Operation Warp Speed, is that a pro-life issue? Is the tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people more that will have had their fertility perhaps irrevocably impacted by Operation Warp Speed, is that a pro-life issue? Is policies that turn human beings into chattel, and you're allowed to die and be denied medical care that would treat you, so that we can bring experimental products to bear in the market instead and sacrifice your life to that altar, is that a pro-life issue? Now, I would answer yes to all of those things. I had somebody say, well, what you're claiming here, Steve, is not the same. It's like my liberal Catholic priest. First of all, if your Catholic priest is trying to tell you that taking money from taxpayers and giving it to social programs is pro-life, you need a new Catholic priest. I mean, why are you going to that parish? Is that like literally the only one, that 100-mile radius? There's got to be someplace else, Todd. Don't you guys you Catholics are kind of everywhere, aren't you?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you can find a home. Yeah.
There's got to be at least one priest in every state in the union that doesn't say stupid crap like that. Okay.
I like that.
I mean, all right. There has to be.
Low bar.
There has to be. Okay. Has to be. So stop going there. That's rule number one. I mean, if you're hearing that from your priest, rule number one is no longer your priest. So let's not bury the lead here. Okay. Stop going there. But it's not the same. In this case, the priest is advocating stealing money from people and calling it welfare, picking people's pockets to promote programs that, at best, are loss leaders. At best. In this case, what the government did, and Trump signed off on all of it, is took your money and then went and killed people with it. I'm sorry, that may not be, the greatest way to sell a podcast these days, but is that true? Did Donald Trump write the checks for Operation Warp Speed, and then was that money then used to kill people? Is that true, gentlemen? Did I say something untrue?
Mm.
It's absolutely true.
Yeah.
It's irrevocably true. So, I mean, if I have to have a difficult time working out the calculus of how many innocent lives Is it? And by the way, I don't even know what RFK Jr.'s abortions. Do you know what it is? I don't know what it is. I'm just guessing, given that he's a lifelong Democrat, that it's going to be some form of pro-choice. I'm just guessing, and that's. But I don't know. I mean, do you know? I don't know. Okay, so this is under the assumption that we know, we likely know. Okay. How many lives is it okay for RFK Jr. and or Donald Trump to have a personal hand in ending and still call themselves pro-life? Whether the vehicle is Planned Parenthood or Operation Warp Speed. Now, I would prefer in a perfect world that I had a candidate that doesn't make me have to make that choice. I might have that in the state of Florida, but then I have another issue with RFK Jr. too. Who is better and more truly motivated to punch in the throat the agencies that took that money from Trump and killed all these people with it than RFK Jr. is? I mean, he has been on the front lines of this battle before I even knew it was decades before I even knew it was really taking place. He's lost his family. He's lost his personal fortune. He's been defrocked from his political party. He's lost a lot. I think I don't know how that math works out. First of all, I'm happy we're even having it. As Daniel Horowitz said a couple of days ago, we have lived through decades where every meaningful Democrat primary was just further radicalizing that party. Okay, this is the first time that someone is going on a national level to stand up and challenge them, to challenge for supremacy in that party on some level of sanity. We can all agree or disagree whether it's enough sanity for our liking. Okay, I'm not. Believe me, at no point am I going to sit here and like turn this into the even if I decide to go down that road, I'm not going to turn it into the RFK Jr. telethon. I understand there are the hurdles here, because I'm trying to have them and work them out on my own right now here live on the air. But at least we have hurdles. At least there is somebody with a real name in the other party who is like, you know what, man, hell no. No, I'm gonna step into the fray. Maybe it'll go nowhere. I don't know. Maybe it'll Bernie Sanders him. I don't know. I know he's not Bernie Sanders, fake Soviet of three homes, who really is just a complete and total con artist grifter. And maybe was a real Marxist for like an hour in 1975. But really, you know, is just here to sell books about why capitalism is bad for $39.95. Okay? I mean, get out of here. You can say a lot of things about RFK Jr. You can't say he's not sincere. Fair? Mm-hmm. So all I said was I'm willing to hear it out. I'm listening. And I do think the life issue is more broadly defined than just strictly about abortion coming off the last few years. 10% of American households just told Rasmussen 10% of Americans just told Rasmussen that they believe someone in their household died because of side effects of the COVID jab. All right, there's 131 million households. 10% would be what, 13 million? I mean, how is that? How is that? I'm going to do some math here. How is that not a life issue? How is it not a life issue? Now let's say that 99% of those people are wrong. Let's say that. You'd still be talking about an event that dealt with the tens of thousands of innocent lives lost. You'd still be talking about an event that killed more people than the Vietnam War. I mean, you'd still be talking about an event that killed more people than Antietam, the deadliest day in American history. How is that not a pro-life issue?
You get no argument from me.
It has to be a pro-life issue. Unjust wars. People who die in unjust... That's not a pro-life issue? I mean, are we pro-life or are we just an anti-abortion lobby? And I love the fact, by the way, that his insertion in the race is begging these questions, frankly. These are the kinds of debates healthy societies get to have. You know what I'm saying? What's the true limit and definition of the most righteousness we can do? We don't get to have those kinds of debates very often in this day and age, do we? In this day and age, it's really like, how much more ground is going to shift underneath our feet and shrink in real time. I much would rather prefer having these sorts of moral arguments and trying to have this sort of moral calculus than the math that gets set at our table on a daily basis, Todd.
I'm going to say this gently, but this is the kind of question, if you are a regular watcher of this show, A, and B, you know Steve's background on life, personally, that these are the riddles you need to be able to figure out for yourself. Because let me present it to you this way. We are right now ripping apart children who are born, trying to change their gender so that the adults in their life can make the world flat. And then if you fight back as a woman, like Riley Gaines did, you are being assaulted and held hostage. We're also living in the world that Steve described regarding the COVID jab. There are those two things going on. Oh, elections that may or may not matter. There's just a lot. So if RFK turns out to be, I'm a Democrat, I'm a Kennedy, we're pro-choice, I wouldn't have overturned Roe v. Wade if it was my vote, but now it's in the state's hands. You go do like you did in Wisconsin and win there. If he checks a box that none of us like, but isn't just stumping and making this fundamentally who he is, and he's going to, and if he would wage war, not on the other things, if suddenly he joined us, I'm just saying for the sake of argument, but this is the world we live in. Trump, did you think Trump was going to be the guy to appoint 3 people to overturn Roe? No. So let's say he also just says, you know what, I just saw what happened to Riley Gaines, and this is insane, and we need to stop this. I grew around strong women. My mother, my cousins, starts talking about, he says, we're done with this. I'm just saying, can you not imagine a world where you would do the same thing as Steve? And all he said was, I'd take a look. I don't know.
I'm listening.
I don't really know why I'm trying to be gentle, but I don't know where you're thrown off by that. Because there's crazy around every corner right now. We're living, it's not theory-based. This is a war we're in, all right? And you can have all your theories you want, and they lead to crappy general after crappy general after crappy general. And sooner or later, Abe Lincoln says, I know you used to be a shiftless drunk, U.S. Grant, but you're my guy because you fight. We got to get better at this.
Did you want to add something to this, Aaron?
Yeah, just briefly. And I want to... The first thing that I'm going to say, I want to say what I'm about to say is not the first calculus that we should ever use in voting or deciding whom to vote for. However, I want to remind you that Donald Trump, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and Mitch McConnell are 3 central figures for why Roe v. Wade was overturned. Mm-hmm. Would you vote for Hitler because God can use him in amazing ways? No, that's not a good reason, or at least first calculus, but it also says don't just dismiss somebody. Also, because of what Todd just said, because of Roe v. Wade, the fate of the pro-life movement is largely in whose hands now, legally and politically?
The states. Yeah.
It's in meaning our hands now.
Yeah. It's largely not a federal issue anymore.
So it's largely not a federal issue anymore. It is conceivable. Now, it's a long road. Now, this is more conceivable than RFK Jr. winning the Democrat nomination or even being close for it. It is conceivable. Donald Trump can't win or can't run for whatever reason. Casey DeSantis would maybe sadly have a resurgence or a recurrence of cancer. It is conceivable that if those 2 dominoes fall, we could be stuck with somebody like an Asa Hutchinson.
or Mike Pence or Nikki Haley, I'd absolutely vote right now. I can tell you right now, I'd vote for RFK Jr. over any of those people.
And I'm in that
general.
same
I can
place.
tell you that part right now.
As long as he doesn't go full trainee madness.
As long as he doesn't go full trainee madness.
I would be in that. I would be in that vote as well, just because of the threat that I think he truly and really, for a number of reasons, but most personally because it is personal to him, he is the biggest threat to the establishment, which means he could be the biggest boon for somebody like us.
And I tell you, not one of us, I guarantee you right now, not one of us has been sitting here since the time Steve first brought that up, pondering, gosh,
yeah, actually haven't talked about it at all.
Can I really make the Kennedy peg, the square pegs? I haven't thought about it since then. We're not really trying to find a way to make it happen. It's just like, look at the world you're in.
Here's the reality. If that 10% number that told Rasmussen they believe someone in their household died because of the COVID, the poison poke. There's 130 million households. 10% is 13 million. Let's say they're off by 99%. That's 130,000 deaths, actually, not tens of thousands of deaths. 130,000 deaths. More Americans died in Antietam than any single day in American history. You know how many died? About 25,000. We're talking about an event that is 4 times greater. At a minimum, 4 times greater than Antietam. We're talking about an event where more Americans died because of the COVID jab. At a minimum, at the lowest possible calculation, more Americans died because of the COVID jab than died in World War I, folks.
And the spike protein is promising, and that's going to be a continued growth industry.
You bet your sweet bippy that is a pro-life issue. You bet it is. At least it's going to be on this show, as long as I'm hosting it.
One more thing, if I could add as well. I've seen this take sparingly, graciously, but sparingly. For those of you who think it's a shame that RFK Jr.'s voice is the way that it is, and I'm not sure what the condition it is that he has. A bunch of Pennsylvanians voted for John Fetterman, and a bunch of Republicans voted for grab him by the hoo-ha. I think that's...
Or Thad Cochran, who was literally John Fetterman.
Yeah.
Yeah. Voted for him in a Mississippi Senate primary a decade ago. Yes.
Yep. So I don't think that's nearly as big of an issue as I think some people might think it is.
Eddie writes, I wanted to write and thank you guys for all you do. I've lived 29 years as an edgy atheist, being very dismissive to religion and religious people. After certain events, I started becoming more curious, considered myself an agnostic searching for the truth. But you guys' show, especially Theology Thursday, played a major role in bringing me to Christ. I was baptized on March 19th. And I want you guys to know you guys are making a difference in your listeners' lives.
Amen.
This is the best feedback we could possibly get, man, and there isn't a close second. So, I mean, you guys can send us, as long as it's true, but, I mean, you can, that's the stuff of well done, good and faithful servant. Did we not perfectly analyze and strategize out the last presidential election cycle? It's that stuff.
The more I hear this, this is the Mark Wahlberg Father Stu principle. And while you said that, great movie, you loved the movie, top 10 movie, but it had too much cursing in it.
Yep.
But he addressed that from some other criticism and said, listen, I know the audience I'm trying to talk to with this movie. I grew up with them. They need to hear me talk like this. I actually think that when we get emails like that, it is that principle. We don't curse, but Steve, other than that, Steve talks very directly. You get uncomfortable language emails all the time, right? Mm-hmm. Stop saying penis, stuff like, this.
Right.
And like,
even if I use anatomical terms, people are, don't do that.
Yes, because no, this is, and I think guys like this, this finally, like, this is real.
Is real. Yeah.
It's not theoretical. It's not just some weird soap opera. It's not just sweater vests. It's real.
Chris Blakesley says, as a Midwesterner, I am painfully familiar with the Golden Boy Governor runs for president phenomenon. Scott Walker and Tim Pawlenty come to mind. I greatly admire the work Ron DeSantis is doing in Florida, and I think he could be a great president, but I'm sensing some of that Golden Boy syndrome emerging in him. He strikes me as not quite ready for prime time on a national campaign. Walker and Pawlenty each pulled blue states closer to purple or red, and each fizzled pretty quickly once they declared a presidential run. And then goes on to say, I want to get to as many of these as I can. One golden boy cannot take on the entire swamp and prevail. We saw this movie from 2016 to 2020. As a movie guy, what's your elevator pitch for the 2024 story? Well, first of all, I don't think that this is a terrible concern to have. You've brought it up several times yourself over the last couple of years, this analogy. Now, my initial comeback would be what Ron DeSantis has done in Florida is way beyond.
Yeah, I don't understand
anything
this.
Tim Pawlenty or Scott Walker have done. Way beyond. Nevertheless, though, and Florida is a much more strenuous. There's like 3 or 4 media markets in Florida bigger than anything like Minnesota has or Wisconsin has, except for one city in each state. Okay, so it's a far more elaborate and provable testing test field, battlefield, practice field than Minnesota or Wisconsin provides. Nevertheless, so was Texas, right? And we are all convinced Rick Perry was going to ride in and save us from Willard in 2012, and that lasted for about 10 minutes. Okay, so that's why we have, you know what? So here's my elevator pitch. Let it play out. Find out. Let's just let it play out and find out. I don't blame you for having this concern at all. I think it's a very reasonable concern. Let's just let it play out and let's find out.
Well, he didn't offer one specific though about why he's not ready for prime. I don't like this is where Donald Trump makes people. You're right to bring up all those pre-Trump examples, but people are going out of their way because of various levels of Trump obsession to destroy now DeSantis and before him Ted Cruz. Both of them are men with feet of clay, but it was preposterous how people in the name of Mr. Trump had to go out and destroy Ted Cruz. Mm-hmm. It was just
punitive.
Yeah.
Yeah. Didn't have to bring the wife into it or, Amanda Carpenter's marriage or any of that stuff.
2 men in our adult lifetime following politics, Steve, so, 30 years. These 2 men are in my top 10 in terms of people who stand and deliver, Ted Cruz and Ron DeSantis. Aren't they in yours top 10?
I would agree. Yeah.
What? Good grief. What? I mean, it's Good Friday. I shudder to think if the Lord himself comes and goes, not ready for prime time. Good enough.
Well, they kind of did make that argument. Nothing good comes from Nazareth. Yeah. Tracy Edwards writes, my concern for DeSantis is, the evil the left will throw. The evil left will throw everything they have at him as a presidential candidate. If he wins, the same crap done to Trump along with the deep state. Can he survive that? Can he financially survive? Or will he be tempted and cave like other promising people have? So someone sent me a note and along these lines too and said, hey, one of my concerns is Trump is independently wealthy and DeSantis is not. Well, okay. DeSantis is the one that punched maybe America's most popular corporation, Disney, in the ballsack in public. Like, the Disney to Florida is what Social Security is to national politics. The fourth rail. You don't touch it. He took a steel-toed boot to their Manleys. Right to their face. I mean, if there was ever something to cave on, it was going to be maybe the biggest tourist attraction, job provider in the entire state of Florida, other than the sugar industry. Certainly its biggest tourist attraction. He did that. So this is the thing. I don't mind. These are good questions to ask. That's why I'm entertaining them. However, what concerns me is there's this idea that we're not going to actually look at people's records. We are acting as if Donald Trump was never president. Yes, he was. He has a record. We're acting as if Ron DeSantis is now not governor of the state Donald Trump moved to. That is the 3rd largest state in the union and the most pivotal swing state in the entire country. He is. They have records. Look first at their records to see if their records tell you the answer to your question, and they may not. You may come back with more concerns.
Speaking of records, didn't Donald Trump just turn himself in to sell T-shirts and raise money?
Yes.
He might not be flush with cash, guys. I'm just saying. Steve, the grace of the Lord is upon you today because I am jawbone of an ass. This is not, if you're regular watching our show, and these questions are deeply frustrating to me. I don't understand. I don't understand.
Christy Schumacher says, please encourage your listeners to request their public libraries buy your books. My library has a system whereby patrons can request books for purchase on their website, and this would get books like Rise of the Fourth Reich further out there. That's a great idea. I hadn't even thought about that.
There we go.
Yeah. So thank you for that, Christy. Joseph wants to know, did I see Ant-Man? It's no more than a C+ or B-, but he'd like my thoughts. It's not a great Marvel movie. I at least enjoyed the fact it was an actual Marvel movie. Not very woke. In fact, at one point in time, Kirk
Douglas?
Yeah, Kirk Douglas. Michael Douglas.
Michael Douglas.
Yeah, the son. Yeah. Sorry. That would have been something. They got Kirk Douglas in this movie. Now that might be the best Marvel movie, if you know what I'm saying. This is the season for resurrections, after all. But Michael Douglas begins to try to make a point about how great socialism is, and the rest of the people shout him down and say, "Shut up!" All right. There's nothing woke in the movie at all, really. And it was just fun to be lost in a universe and to have, really true villains and true heroes. It's the first actual Marvel movie they've made in several years. It's just not a well-made one. And that's why it ended up disappointing at the box office. But at least they let me go back to a Marvel movie again and sit in a theater for a couple of hours and escape and not be lectured to.
So to the extent that this... I mean, I still want to care on some level. So is Kang the Thanos or not?
Yeah, he is going to be the Thanos of the next... Well, we'll see what happens now with this Jonathan Majors situation. I don't know what's going to happen with that.
But they said... It's troubling that his lawyer
said the day after his arrest that they were going to release all this exculpatory evidence. It's been 3 weeks and we haven't seen any of it. Okay, so I don't know. I think that may get determined by what happens with this.
I remember Thanos. You just saw snippets of him in after trailer stuff, but when you saw him the first time, he's like, "Oh, they got that right." You're saying in a very bad mood. Did they get? How did
Kang
they?
Is actually he's good. He's great as Kang.
Okay.
And if you know Marvel Comics, Kang is a Thanos level of threat. You bet. Or Thanos is a Kang level of threat. Yeah.
Okay.
Walton says, I'm a big Punisher fan, wants to know what the sticker on my laptop says. He's talking about this sticker right here on my laptop. It was given to me by a member of the military who was honored by shows like ours, who stood up and defended people like him as they pushed back on the unethical, immoral, illegal poison poke mandates in the Department of Defense. And so this was given as a token of his appreciation for being warriors for our warriors. And so that meant a lot to me, and so that's why I put it up on the laptop. More in a moment. Well, Americans have had it with woke corporatism or spirit of the age commerce. Unfortunately, you can be as fed up with it as you want. That we just don't have a fully functional parallel economy right now, and so it's difficult to avoid completely doing business with people who hate you on some level. And that's why we should be very thankful that there is at least one place, and it just so happens to be a product that all of us have to use these days, where this does apply. And that's with our friends over at Patriot Mobile. Make this switch today. America's only really American mobile phone company left. And right now they can also give you access to all three major networks out there. So if you end up moving, or maybe your home is in a dead spot for a particular network in your hometown and you want to switch networks, they can do that for you anytime you want and for free when you make the switch to Patriot Mobile. Just go to patriotmobile.com/Steve. That's patriotmobile.com/Steve. You can also call them at 878-PATRIOT. 878-PATRIOT. When you do, you'll get a free activation with the offer code Steve. Free activation with the discount offer code Steve at patriotmobile.com/Steve. Or give them a call at 878-PATRIOT. So I want to close this out here today in recognition of what today is. And for those of you that are new or agnostic or irreligious, or maybe you just go to a church, which would sadly not be uncommon these days, that hasn't properly catechized you into what these things truly mean, what these events are truly about. Today is the day that Christians traditionally refer to as Good Friday. As in the day that Christ, this is the day that Christ was crucified for the sins of the world. And as Jesus is on the cross, he is breathing his last breath. This is following a day of torturous scourging. When you were scourged in ancient Rome, they had these thing called cat o' nine tails, these whips, and they would literally take teeth, bones of animals, and put them at the end of their whips. So it's not just the whip itself that you are getting lashed. These objects they would put at the end of the whips would dig into your flesh and tenderize it. Sometimes you would see bone marrow exposed. And so he is not just lashed. That would be painful enough. But I mean, he's tortured. And almost to a point of disfiguration. Following that event, you would have to then carry your cross to Golgotha. That's where you were hung out to dry in the sun outside the city. You would carry your cross. This was about 300 pounds, these two pieces of wood together. And they had to be pretty sturdy to put grown men and every now and then grown women upon them. Now, by now, you're so beaten down because you traditionally got scourged or tortured before you were crucified. You just simply don't have the strength to carry this. And so you would carry one of the beams, and either the military would have the other one taken by horse or donkey. In the case of Christ, they pull someone from the crowd and have him carry the other section of the beam. Then they take you to the hill where the crucifixions take place, outside the city in Jerusalem. And nails are pounded into your extremities by hammer. Your feet, your hands. And then you are literally strung up on this wooden beam, raised up into the sun, and just left there to rot. Christ is sitting up there in his own urine, sweat. Maybe by this point in time, his bowels are empty because he's emaciated. But it's a disgusting sight. And as this saddest of all events in human history, the moment when we literally killed God, not in a Nietzsche philosophical way or a Time magazine cover, we literally did it. He cries out his final words, which are, "It is finished," or another way to translate these words, "It is accomplished." Now, what is finished? What is accomplished? He is referring to the justifiable wrath of God, ignited by all the evil mankind has done with the freedom and dominion God gave us. He gave us freedom, he gave us dominion, we took it, and we used it for evil. And he is taking that wrath for all the evil we have done with all of our freedom and dominion that we are currently doing and we will do still in the future as a species. He is taking all of this upon himself. And so what he is saying is this wrath is satisfied. This debt is paid. And the debt is paid as it could only be by Jesus, the sinless, spotless lamb slain before the foundation of the world. Why a lamb? Well, this goes back to an event that many of our countrymen will commemorate next week called Passover. And part of the last plagues of Egypt that God inflicts upon the Egyptians as judgment for their slavery and torture of the Jewish people, his covenant people. Each of these plagues is a judgment against the Egyptian religious system. The notion of Egyptian supremacy in the world, God is showing, no, I am supreme. And the last one is the angel of death. And the Israelites are instructed to take the blood of a lamb and paint it over the door so that the angel of death will literally pass over all whom dwell there, while judgment is carried out against the Egyptians. And so this is what saved the Israelites from that wrath. Someone's blood was sacrificed or spilled for their sins. In the case of all of humanity, that's what Jesus is for us. That's why he's referred to as the Lamb slain before the foundation of the world. No other debt for our sin must be paid, nor can we offer any other payment or anyone else as payment. To do so is to say to God, you gave something so precious as your own son as a sacrifice. That's not good enough. I know better than you. You're basically saying to your heavenly Father that the sacrifice of his only begotten Son was unworthy, irrelevant. You are rejecting the mercy of your Creator. You are an ingrate, if you say such a thing. Now, I know in this world today, we will say, well, how can this be the only way to satisfy the wrath of God? Some will claim it is wrong to reject a broader path to restoration with God, but you're actually looking at it 180 degrees wrong. I once had someone come to me in one of my first radio jobs, and he said, so let me get this straight. You believe that this is the only way to heaven when there's all these other ways out there. And I looked back at him, and here's what I said. I said, let me get this straight. You would rather try to figure out which of all these other ways to get to heaven is actually the right way? You'd rather do that? You'd rather look at, like, how many other religions? How many other takes on this? How many other systems, right? You would rather have to try to figure out on your own which of them is true and accurate and gamble that you might have picked the wrong one. That would suck, right? Devoting your entire life to figure out what the right path is, then you found out at the end you picked the wrong one. That would be pretty terrible, right?
Yes.
You'd rather gamble on that than God making this one simple truth plain to you? Call me exclusivist if you want, but I think you're a moron. I mean, let's just look at this as a wager. You're going to wager that you know better than God. Good luck. A loving Father made it simple and plain to us how to be known by him for all of eternity. And it doesn't require any secret knowledges, any confusing quests, any intermediaries to satisfy, no mysteries to solve. Just you and him, one-on-one, amid the entirety of the universe at the cross. Because the cross is an intersection between two beams, like this. And it is only here where he and us truly intersect as well. The road is simple, but it is not easy to humble ourselves. That's why we look for another way. We look away because the magnitude of the torturous suffering done on our behalf convicts us. It makes us feel ashamed. We acknowledge we are undeserving of this. And all of that is true. And that's why it's so great. There will, though, come a day when we will all acknowledge it. When every knee will bow and every tongue will confess that this Yeshua of Nazareth, a Jewish baby born in a barn, grew up to be our Messiah, our atoning sacrifice, and is now King of Kings and Lord of Lords. We are all going to recognize this. You may choose to do so now and accept his grace that secures your forever in paradise with the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Or you will do so later as you are confronted with the enormity of your sin and the damnation you have earned for your acts of evil and thoughts of evil that are not atoned for. But make no mistake, either way, bow and confess, everyone within the sound of my voice shall. And that is why we call it Good Friday. Gentlemen, you have any closing thoughts?
There's obviously tons of avenues of the profound that we could go down after what you just eloquently described this day being about. One of the most profound things I've seen this year, this Good Friday, almost to that level, is something published by the Babylon Bee. They published an article this week called "The Top 0 Things You Did to Earn Your Salvation."
That's great.
And I think it basically says, part of what you're talking about here. The theologians at the Babylon Bee have come up with the top 10 or top 0 list of things you did to earn your salvation. And it has 10 bullet points. Number 10, blank. Number 9, blank.
That's perfect.
Number 8, blank. 76543.
We should have just gone with that and saved everybody 15 minutes.
7654321, blank. And then it has an honorable mention. And the honorable mention is this: the sin that made your salvation necessary. As much as we love, and rightfully should, to extol, and we should, and praise the name of Jesus, and we should, and thank God for the perfect sacrifice he gave and provided for us, and we should, we must always remember this Good Friday is only good because it was necessary, because of humanity's sin. That's the part we don't like to talk about quite so much.
Mm-hmm.
The scene, the picture that you just painted, the cat of nine tails, the emaciated, half dead, almost dying Savior, hung on a cross by nails in the extremities.
The God who bleeds.
The God who bleeds is only necessary because I'm a sinner, and Steve's a sinner, and Todd's a sinner, and you are a sinner as well. It's only necessary. Praise God that he gave us that one perfect, spotless sacrifice. But also recognize the totality of what that means. It's because we are sinners. We need that. If we are not recognizing the totality of what Good Friday is really good about, we're missing the whole point.
Amen.
Be like children. Jesus' disciples, because they didn't understand that and many other things when he was alive, they would do what we now do on steroids, try to be too smart by half, triangulate. What do you mean? How can anybody be? But afterwards, after Jesus had died for them, after he had risen for them, you saw these men understood so deeply what it meant to be like children. Obey. Listen to your father. Do what he tells you. Trust him. They trusted that to the point of death themselves. Being like children is what showed them how to be real men. So too must you in these dark times. You're going to think that, no, these are different times. We have different no, it's all the same. There's nothing new under the sun. You must be like children. You're not going to solve this with your special, super creative whatever that you have. Return to the Father as a prodigal son. Apologize. Listen to him. Do what he tells you. Even if it's messy, even if it's hard. But it's still way more simple than what you're trying to accomplish right now, which is impossible.
Amen. Amen. And that that same Father repays you for killing his Son by raising him from the dead on the third day to conquer the last enemy, death, and invite you, after you have your fingerprints on the murder weapon with your acts, with your misdeeds, with your evil thoughts. After he puts his Son in your place, he then invites you to join him and his Son in eternity forever, alive in paradise. But hey, you go ahead. You find your own way. You figure this whole thing out. You come up with a better deal than that. By golly, if you can, let us know about it. We'd like to hear about a better deal than that. By all means. For everybody that knows a good deal when you see one, happy Easter. John 3:17.